Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you are a returning subscriber, hello, bestie. Hope you're having an amazing, wonderful day and a wonderful week. You see what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. So it's a no-brainer. Just hit that subscribe button and get that bonus greeting next time. I'm here with my good friend, Jacki Cheslow. She's the global program compliance leader for IEEE. You're somebody who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. If people don't know you, they need to get out from under the rock they're sleeping and get familiar, but you're a thought leader. You're a thought leader. Your presentations at the SCCE are always great. And you're just somebody who really, again, I've learned a lot from. Just you take a lot of these concepts and you really can humanize them really well and help folks kind of put them into practice. So I've been real excited to get you on the Ethics Experts and glad to have you here.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you asking me to be here. It's always fun to chat with you.
Yeah. So let's just jump in. You know, before in our pre-show, you were talking about resilience and balance and kind of, you know, sorting through, I think, all the challenges that come with, you know, us trying to juggle all the things on our plate. What are some of those, you know, what have you been kind of dealing with and how have you been sort of keeping your sanity?
Well, keeping my sanity is actually the key here. I changed jobs at the beginning of 2020. So I was 6 weeks in this role when COVID broke and we began to shut down. And I was brought in to bring a program to life. And I mean, the challenges that we faced over the last 2 years are unprecedented. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Mm-hmm. So I've been given a lot of thought to resilience and being able to deal with change and maintain your stamina, and how much the passion we have as compliance officers for what we do helps us maintain that equilibrium and to keep plowing ahead no matter what. You know, we come out of COVID and Russia invades Ukraine, and it's a whole new set of issues. If you're in a multinational company right now, and if you're a compliance officer at a multinational right now, you're busy. There's no doubt about it. There's just so much going on around us and so much changing on a daily basis. So, you know, from a good part of the last year and a half, I've been thinking about that, you know, how we keep going and how we manage.
So how has this Russian thing kind of impacted you directly? Because for a lot of people, it's kind of on TV and it's like, you know, I feel bad about it. And these pictures I'm seeing and this footage I'm seeing is brutal, but a lot of us are not really that affected by it other than at the gas pump. So how has it affected you over the last couple of, you know, weeks or months?
We have members in 180 countries around the world. So needless to say, I have members in Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. So it's something we're dealing with, and how we're coping with the challenges it presents to us. Mm-hmm. IEEE is it's a public charity, and our whole purpose for being is to promote the development of technology to improve mankind, and it presents a whole host of challenges when that's the sphere you're in, particularly in circumstances like this. So it is a challenge. No one knows how to deal with it. The Russian sanctions are unprecedented in their complexity and scope and the speed at which they're coming at us. And the coordination between the EU and the US and every other country has just been enormous. It's nothing we've ever seen before. So, you know, we've had about, well, I would say 8 weeks now to digest the sanctions as they come out. And it's hard to even keep up reading them. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, how do you keep up with them? And how do you sort through them? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, yeah. Thursday mornings are my sanctions day, because the releases have been coming out pretty regularly on Wednesdays. And, you know, you kind of pass through them quickly. Does this apply to us? Does it not? And if it does, how? And, you know, so we've been working our way through it. I've got a lot of great support, both within the business and externally. You know, I've got, you know, of course, Sanctions Council, like everybody around the world that's involved in it. But I've worked very, very closely with our senior leadership team, and we've been coordinating as we go. Anybody that's in a multinational and a diverse organization knows what I'm talking about. They say it takes a village. It really does to do something like this. It's the only way to get through it. I've learned more about Russia than I thought I'd ever know. And so it's been busy. It's been difficult to keep up. We're doing it, we're managing it, but it has been fascinating. And it's a whole new aspect to what I do.
So you said that it takes a village, and you joined this company kind of before COVID. So how did you sort of construct this village in this work from home environment, presumably this sort of disparate group of people that you're leaning on to help sort through this stuff? How were you able to achieve that?
You know, people say you can't build relationships virtually and you can't network virtually, but you sure can. And it's all a matter of making sure. First of all, my camera is always on. Even if nobody else's is, I want people to know who I am. Every conversation involves some element of personal. You know, whatever little bit I may know about the individual. I always ask about family. I ask about pets. As a matter of fact, you can see my dogs behind me. They're a great icebreaker. And they're always in the room with me. So you build relationships that way. And, you know, as much as I've had to learn about the organization, they've had to learn about me. So it's a back and forth. And I'm one of those people where I would never say to you, I don't know, that's not my job, or I don't know the answer. I like, you can ask me anything. And if I don't know the answer, maybe I know who does. You know, I always joke when I do presentations that you can ask me about anything, including dinner reservations in New Jersey. So, you know, and it helps. It really does help you build the relationships you need and the support you need.
You know, you're just a very unguarded person. You're kind of what you see is what you get kind of a person. Have you always been that way, or has that confidence grown over time?
I've always been that way, but not always. It was sometimes to my detriment. I've had to learn to temper my frankness, my passion and my frankness. I've had to learn to temper both. Just because I think there's a right way to do something doesn't mean everybody in the world agrees with me. So it is something that I've learned over time to temper. I think a lot of the confidence comes from the fact that I'm the oldest of 8 children. So I've been a leader since I was a young child, you know, driving the herds, as they say.
Right.
And you know, I think I'm a frustrated teacher. I wanted to be a teacher as a young girl, and got talked out of it and told I wouldn't make enough money. And now all I can think is, will I be retired and I have a beach house? I should have went into teaching, but I didn't. So I love sharing my passion for compliance. I mean, ethics and compliance to me are what make the world go round.
Tell me some more about
they
that.
They really are. If you want people to treat you with respect and dignity, you treat people with respect and dignity, and compliance and ethics is about just that. It's about doing the right thing. It's about acting in a way that is equitable and fair to everyone around you. It's not just about compliance with the law. It's about being a good person, I guess.
Yeah, I think when people view ethics and compliance as just what you said first, just compliance with the law, I think it loses so much of the dimensionality of it, of what it's really meant to drive forward, right? Like what it's really meant to be. I mean, those laws at some level are extensions of that core of what you just talked about, of doing the right thing or creating the right kind of society and so forth. Do you find how do you find sort of people on a spectrum of like getting what you're talking about, that added dimensionality, versus just seeing it as this very sort of, I don't want to say stodgy, but this kind of black and white kind of almost like sterilized thing versus this sort of more humanistic sort of like global impact type of thing that you're talking about?
Right. So you have to check the box, people.
Okay. Yeah.
So the law says we do ABC and we do ABC and then we're good. And so I think it comes a lot out of I'm trying to think the right way to phrase this. It comes a lot, passion is the word that comes to mind. If I can make the people around me as enthusiastic about doing the right thing as I am, make them care about it. I think that's the big thing. Start with what's in it for them and what's the benefit to them, make them care about it. And then they'll embrace it. They embrace the broader picture. Years ago, I had a mentor who came out of GE. And GE, under Jack Welch, had an amazing compliance program. But one of the things that they always stressed, and it's part of their compliance and ethics program documents, is the spirit and the letter. So not only do we follow the code of conduct to the letter, we follow it, the spirit of it as well. And I think that's the part that you try to imbue. Beating people up, telling them they have to follow this rule or this policy doesn't work. Getting people to care about working in an ethical environment and making the world a better place does. And you have to make them care. And I'm fortunate at IEEE in that the whole organization cares. They're all about doing the right thing. And I work with some really interesting people. Now, I've challenged at IEEE because we are a membership-based organization, and they're all engineers. And many of them have multiple postgraduate degrees, so some of the smartest people on earth.
Yeah.
And I then have to go to them and explain the compliance program to folks that are either academics or they're in technology development. It's not an easy thing to do. So I find that using that, making them care part of it first, helps me explain why we do what we do in compliance, why it's important. So everything I do revolves around supporting IEEE's mission. That's where it starts from. IEEE's mission is the development of mankind for the betterment of humanity. So every conversation I have revolves around supporting that mission. And our members live and breathe it.
Do you feel like it's harder or easier relative to other situations you've been in? Harder or easier, the fact that you're in a nonprofit that has that well-stated mission? Is it harder or easier to get to the end goal, which we're talking about here, getting buy-in for these compliance, programs or these policies that you're putting into place?
I don't know that it's harder or easier. It's different. It is different. I'll go back to making people care. You make them care about different things. So in my prior role, my last role was a Fortune 4 publicly traded company. And it was all about delivering on the promises you made to Wall Street. So when you made people care, you made them care about the bottom line, you made them care about the P&L, you made them care about the impact on their bonuses if we didn't make those numbers, right? So now that's not what I'm trying to get, that's not where I'm focusing my efforts on. I'm making them care about the success of IEEE as a whole, because as long as we are successful, we can continue to fulfill our mission, and that's what it's all about.
Well, I think
so. It's not harder or easier. It's just different. It's what I'm focusing on is different.
That's pretty interesting. So, I think everybody cares about something, right? Even somebody who's pretty nonplussed or whatever. There's something that they're passionate about. There's something that they're excited about. There's something that they're spending their time on that's providing some level of, I'm saying outside of work. There's something that they're doing to feed themselves, emotionally or whatever. So that's just kind of an interesting frame that you just presented, listen, in this company, it's a Fortune 5 or whatever you said, Fortune 4 company. The thing that we all sort of implicitly or maybe explicitly care about is performing to Wall Street. So the bottom, it's sort of that bottom line focus. You could tie, in that case, in that sort of environment, you had to tie the purpose of these things to that sort of broader purpose. Here, you have perhaps a more altruistic purpose. And to some degree, I'd imagine, that type of an organization selects people that resonate with that purpose. They believe in technology. They believe that the world can get better from that. So those are the heartstrings that you're going to pluck. But in either case, you're plucking some kind of a heartstring to get people to actually buy into what you're doing.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's getting them to see that it makes a difference. And it's not hard. People think compliance is hard, that compliance is an add-on.
Right.
But compliance should never be, it should never be tacked onto anything. Compliance should be part of how we do business. And that's very much the focus of my program here is operationalizing it, make it part of everyday thinking and everyday processes. So if doing something that makes you compliant is part of how you do business, you're going to do it. As opposed to compliance coming in and saying, hey, I know you've got this process, but I need you to do this as well. So I'm very focused on that, not only here, in my previous roles as well, in making it part of how we do business on a daily basis. It's a lot easier to comply when it's built in rather than added on.
Why do people struggle so much with like that integration or like actually integrating it into everything else? Like, why do so many people think of it as hard, both on, I really think on the practitioner side and on the maybe even leadership side?
Yeah, I think in older organizations, companies that have been around for a long time, there was no compliance. Compliance didn't really become a thing, until maybe 20 years ago. I mean, there was compliance and we had laws to comply with, but they never looked at it that way. But compliance and ethics programs, as we think of them today, weren't around 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So it's an add-on to the way they've always done business. And I've seen that in multiple places where if you're I find younger companies, and when I talk to practitioners that are in startups or in newer organizations, it's just part of what they do. If you think of the difference between being in let's say, a financial institution and in a manufacturing company, in a financial institution, you're used to compliance. It's the way you've always done business. There's all those, check all those boxes and make sure you do it. But in a manufacturing, you're only worried about getting the widgets out the door. Right? So now we've come in, you've been in business for 40 years, and we've come in and said, hey, we need to think about all of this as well. And a lot of companies, and I shouldn't say a lot of companies, some practitioners come in and they overlay compliance on existing processes. And it's added layers, it's added steps. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you get resistance. I think if you can find a way, and you can only do that by building your village, if you can find a way to make it part of the day-to-day business as usual, you've got a better chance of succeeding.
It's just it's kind of an interesting problem, because in some industries, there's some compliance stuff that, while an add-on or whatever, that didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, it's now part of everything. Like, think of a trading firm. Every single trade, that's compliance is part of that whole kind of apparatus.
Every email, every text message. Right.
And so, that sort of got grafted onto the body very quickly, and now is sort of part of, what I'm saying? It's kind of part of that, the day-to-day, it's integrated in everything. And then in other industries or situations, it just seems like people really kind of have that tendency to just, it's like a patch on a suitcase or something, I'm saying, like a sticker on a suitcase. It's like, it's not really part of the thing. It's not really affecting the thing. And to your point, there's that resistance. I just wonder, like, what's the strong force, or what's the true cause of all of this? And obviously it's not a silver bullet, but is it, some people don't have the sort of the propensity to just do that sort of village building, coalition building, and that sort of heart for other people? Is it just they acclimate more to the ones and zeros or the words on the page? Is it a leadership mismatch? I mean, again, GE is a very, very massive company, a very old company. I mean, you're not the first person I've heard how great their program has been. You know what I'm saying?
They did compliance long before we did. And if you had a compliance violation in your business unit, you went up on Jack Welch's Hall of Infamy. He would put your picture up on the screen during his meetings with the senior leadership team and call you out. So they learned to comply. It was a bit of a stick, but it worked. And people live and breathe it. And I actually had the opportunity to go meet with their compliance team a few years back and just share ideas. So it was fascinating to listen to them. And so, it depends on how you come to compliance, I guess. You think about organizations that come to it through a DIA or a deferred prosecution agreement, or a monitor gets put in place. And it's harder, I think, than to make it part of the business. It's harder, I think, to integrate it, because people see it as somebody from the outside coming, we have to do all of this. But if you've got a management team that believes it should be organic, it's easy to bring it in, I think. And I've been very fortunate, and this is my third U.S. corporation that was a multinational. And I've been very fortunate to be able to get that done where I've been. Yeah, not always to the extent I would have liked, but get it in as much as you can. And then the other thing I say to compliance people all the time is, if they're not going to let you in the front door, find an open window. Right? So if they're not going to let you in, when you walk in and say, you come in and you want to help them, find a pain point.
Right.
And see how you can help them, and use that as your opening. Bring some value to the table before you start asking them to work with you.
I mean, it seems so obvious. It's how you do everything in all other aspects of our life. It seems to kind of dissipate when we step into an organization, which is just kind of, it's so interesting. I don't know. And you'd think also that, I mean, at some level, everybody who's in ethics and compliance, assuming you're not just working in a tech company where there's just two people and just a bunch of computers, like, it's just human beings. So all the sort of compliance violations, all the ethics violations are caused by human beings, either from malfeasance or from just ignorance or apathy or whatever. Like, it's all rooted in a person. And, that's why I always,
most of the time you have a compliance violation, they're trying to do a good thing.
Yeah,
They
right.
just go about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's for the good of the company.
Totally. That's a great point. That's a really, really good point. Yeah, there's probably a very small portion of like the bad acting that are these violations that are rooted in something like truly sinister, to your point, right? Somebody's caring about something. Yeah. They care about something that's kind of sort of driving those actions. But, it's, I love kind of behavioral science and why people do things and why they don't do things. I think it's such like a compelling and interesting kind of field of study. And there's just so much that we can learn from that. I mean, that's really what you're talking about. Bring some value, generate some reciprocity, reframe what you're asking for from the perspective of how this is going to be better for everybody, or better right. for like what they care about. It's shocking to me, honestly, like how much folks struggle with this, or how much, I listen to a talk of somebody being like, man, I just can't get any traction. And somebody starts asking them some questions about what their sort of persuasion path has been. And there's like red flags all along the way. Well, they should do it because they should do it. And that's the law and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, people still speed and that's the law. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are going to do what they do. You know what I mean?
Yep. And that's about your risk tolerance, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's actually a great point.
If I'm going to get home 5 minutes earlier, it's worth the risk of getting a ticket. Yeah,
and just recognizing that everybody has a different risk tolerance. When we, as an ethics and compliance team, we're kind of oversampled, probably for people who are more risk-minded. We're probably have a higher or a lower risk tolerance than the average person in our organization. So we can't just, everybody kind of has that fallacy though of like, well, everyone's just like me. And like, really, nobody's really like you, right? Everyone's not like you. So we have to figure out.
Everyone's so different.
That's right. So I'd love to hear how it's been different for you in this organization versus the other three, or the other couple of multinationals that you've worked in, and what really drew you to this opportunity, both from a professional, maybe even from like a purpose standpoint.
Okay. So what's very different for me is I'm working with volunteers all the time, from our board of directors to the people running conferences and writing articles and developing training for IEEE are volunteers. So I can't go to them and say, you must do things this way.
Right.
I just don't have that option. So I've really had to become agile at that, making them care about it, making them want to do it. And you miss it sometimes. Like, it used to be easy. I go to the CEO, say, I want to put a policy in place, and we just change the rules, right? You can't do that in a volunteer organization. The volunteers want to do what the volunteers want to do, and they're our lifeblood. They are the reason that I am there. I am a support person. My job is to support the volunteers. So I work very hard so that they see me as someone they can come to and say, I want to do X, Y, Z. How can I do it? How can we make this happen? And it takes time. It takes time to build that kind of trust and relationship with people. And I actually only work with a very small subset of the volunteers because of where I sit. But even then, you know, it's you make yourself available. You try to help them as much as you can to achieve their goals. And they would say, I'm a volunteer myself. I'm chapter president for an information governance group in New Jersey. I'm a volunteer, so I get it. Your time is very precious, but they're all there for the right reasons.
Yeah.
They all want to do well. They all want to do right, and you just got to get them to come to you. And it goes back to what I said earlier. You know, help them with something, build that that relationship. So that's been very different for me. And I actually, when I made this move, it was time. I'd been at Avis for 12 years, and I was ready for something a little different. The fact that it was a public charity and they are mission driven was definitely an attraction. I wasn't looking for a job at the time. They came to me, they put it in front of me, and when I heard about the organization, I was like, all right, let's see what this is about. And the more I learned about IEEE as a whole, the more I wanted to be there. And I've participated now probably in the interview and hiring process for a half dozen people.
Wow.
And I find that almost all of them are driven by wanting to contribute back. And that's everyone from admins to attorneys. They've done their bit in the corporate world. They've been where they want to, in other places, and they want to work someplace where they feel like their work is bringing value to the world.
How much?
And it's an amazing thing to work with.
Yeah, I bet it is an amazing thing. We kind of started off talking about resilience, and in a company that's full of people that seem so mission minded or seem so sort of purpose driven, how have you seen this sort of broad level of resilience to the challenges? I mean, you kind of stepped in at a bunch. It's been like probably challenge after challenge over the last 2 years, right? Like, how have you seen that resilience play out in a different way than maybe you would have expected it to play out at your sort of profit forward, previous, companies or other folks that in other companies, versus, like what they're dealing with,
Yeah, well, very much focused on supporting the people, not just the business. And that was from the staff and the volunteer perspective, from both sides. Their ability to adapt quickly. Our conference business runs about 1,800 conferences, some that we technically sponsor, some we co-sponsor, some are ours, every year in person.
Whoa.
Through the end of 2019.
Wow.
And we had begun to make the shift to virtual in China at the end of 2019 because COVID was there first. But we were able to transition from these live in-person events to virtual events. I mean, faster than I've ever seen any business make a change.
Wow.
And successfully do it. And that wasn't staff driving that. That was volunteers and staff working as a team. It was just incredible that the transitions they were able to make. Did it come with challenges? Absolutely. But we were still able to provide educational content. We do STEM programs, and we run programs for college students and for engineering, and we have student branches. They were still able to do the educational program. They just switched it over to virtual. I mean, the organization as a whole was incredibly agile and adapted, and I don't think I would have seen that in other organizations.
Yeah, it's crazy what kind of a unified purpose can bring out of people. It really is wild.
That's it.
So let's talk a little bit about this Great Resignation, because that's the other big battle that all of these organizations are fighting right now. How have you seen that? Like, how has that affected you, and what do you think's at the root of it? What do we do to kind of fix this from an E&C standpoint?
Yeah, I don't want to say this because I don't want to, discount it for anybody else, but I haven't seen it. We are having trouble filling roles and hiring, but we have not seen the Great Resignation at IEEE to date. People, life is here. It's nothing to, we recognize every quarter, they recognize the anniversaries. And the last quarter, we had one 35 years, we had a couple of 30 years, we had
Wow.
multiples of 25 years. So people get into this organization and stay because they're committed to it.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know that it's the same elsewhere. I mean, I certainly haven't seen it. You know, every organization has its old schoolers. They've been there forever. But this one, it's like people come in out of college and retire here.
Wild.
And when you think about the job space today, that doesn't happen anywhere else.
No, it doesn't. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot to learn from that, right? There's a lot to learn from, you know, what a clarity of purpose and what a resonant purpose of an organization, the benefits that can have, not only in the employees' life. Like, those people aren't chained to a desk there. I'm sure they're marketable people. They're smart people. They could go and get a job somewhere else. I mean, you're in a very sort of like cutting edge field, and yet they stay in spite of, I'm sure, you know, I'm sure they're on LinkedIn. I'm sure there's recruiters hitting them up and stuff like that. And they continue to stay for some reason. And
Right.
I mean, what do you think it is? Is it just the clarity of purpose? Is it that they feel like they're changing the world? I mean, what is it?
I think everybody there in some small part feels like they're doing something to make the world a better place. I think everybody, top to bottom.
Yeah.
That really does make a difference because, you know, the old saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And not that people don't gripe and complain and,
I mean, it's
and
work.
I'm overworked.
Totally.
You know, it's work, but everybody loves what they do. You know, and there's an ever evolving group of volunteers, so you get exposed to new people all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's constant ebb and flow of people coming in and out from all over the world, and you get a chance to meet and know these folks. I mean, it's a good place to be at.
Yeah, there's an interesting stat. We just did a talk about the Great Resignation, and there's an interesting stat that, you know, I don't know, a study came out, I think by Deloitte in August of last year, that said 65% of people are looking for new jobs. I mean, that's just an astronomical number, or considering it or something. But the point is, like, if 2 out of 3 people are dissatisfied with their place of work to the extent that they're looking for a new job, it's probably not just money. It's, you know, and then it goes into all these other factors: a toxic workplace, not feeling valued. You know, my friend Ron wrote this article about sort of like really like moral compromise and like the kind of, you know, PTSD-esque trauma that provides on a person when they feel like they're like selling out for a paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Like they see their companies say these things and then do these other things that are in total conflict to them. And that lack of purity of purpose, or that sort of like that contradiction or that hypocrisy in pursuit of a dollar, it starts to weigh on people. And I think, you know, what it sounds like with your organization, you guys can sidestep a lot of that because that clarity of purpose is so pure and it resonates with folks and so forth. And I just think,
I think the pandemic has caused us all to step back and take a look what we're doing.
Totally.
And reorganize our priorities.
Right.
I mean, I think it's just said to the world, pause and think about it. You know, is this really where you want to be? Is it really what you want to do? What's important in your life?
That's right. And also, the cost of switching has dropped dramatically. Like we're meeting over Zoom. You guys are doing conferences over Zoom. Everybody's used to it now. We've hired people that I've never even met face to face for our company. And that's normal. Yep. Like I have a friend who's in private equity and they're buying companies having never, you know, met these guys, which again, 5 years ago, they would have never done that. So that whole sort of lowering of the barrier for like labor to move has allowed people a ton more options to reconsider, well, you know, is this job for me? Do I want to consider something else? I mean, it's a really, everyone keeps saying the new normal. And I think that ends up kind of glossing over how massive of like a paradigm shift we're living through.
That's it. I'm back in a hybrid environment right now.
Mhm.
So I'm in the office 3 days a week and I'm home 2, which is fine. But if I had to go back to the office 5 days a week, I'd have to think about it. Do I really want to do that? It takes a big chunk of your life.
Right.
And actually, it takes a big chunk of my working time as well. Because if
It's
I
true.
have to spend 3 hours commuting, that's 3 hours I'm not working.
Right.
So I think the more flexible employers can be today, and the more they consider that the change, you can't go back to life the way it was in 2019. It's just not anymore. And I think employers need to really think about, the quality of life, the balance issues. We still have people with childcare issues because daycare centers haven't opened up yet. And there's no after school programs. And I've got my 2 pandemic puppies behind me. So both of them were acquired during the pandemic. So
Oh, wow.
people's lives have changed.
Totally.
Yeah, people's lives have changed.
That's a good point. So let's go back in time. Let's go back to a young Jacki. What do you wish you knew sooner? What lessons, if you can go back in time, would you like to tell a young Jacki that you learned later?
I think what we were just talking about. It's not about the big dollars. It's not about just the almighty buck. I can remember, whatever it took to get ahead, and that was the mantra. And that's changed dramatically because that's not the case anymore. Now it's more about whatever gives me satisfaction. And it's funny, when I was leaving my last place to come here, they said, whatever they're paying you, we'll match. And I was like, well, ironically, they're paying me less. And they just looked at me.
We'll match that too.
They just looked at me and said, it's not about the money. I'm not having fun here anymore.
Right.
And if I'm not having fun, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go someplace where I can have fun. And fun is probably not the right word for it, but I want to enjoy what I'm doing.
Right.
I want to get some satisfaction at the end of the day that I've accomplished something. Even if I've only swayed one person, I want to feel like I've accomplished something.
How has, what quote unquote accomplishing something, how has that definition changed in your life over time?
Well, before it was all about accomplishing for me.
Yeah.
It was all about me accomplishing something, and that's not anymore. It's when I get someone's project to a successful point, or when I'm able to help you overcome a compliance hurdle to do what you want to do, or even when I just get somebody to buy into the fact that, yes, you do have to complete that training. It's just those little things. It's a lot. I'm about to roll out a new training compliance program here. We have 6 modules currently for compliance, and they're each about 25, 30 minutes, but they're dry. They're very legally based, and we're rolling out a new program. It's going to be under 40 minutes, and it's more about IEEE and what we do and how we do it. And I'm really, really excited about it because I think I'm bringing the staff a better experience. So for me, that's the kind of accomplishments I like now.
Yeah, you're making an impact. It's not just adding another accolade to yourself. You're changing something. Yeah. How did you get into this game? How did you go from being talked out of being a teacher to now running, global compliance program for this massive multinational company?
By accident. I always think of Roy Snell's book, The Accidental Compliance. I was at one point I started as a legal secretary, became a paralegal, and I went in-house in a company that had never had an in-house legal department, and we had a document production for litigation. And it was, at that time, a paper document production. And I asked where the file room was, and they sent me into this thing that was about the size of a football field, with broken windows and bird's nest, and I was like, ah! And I ran downstairs to the attorney I was working for. He said, so fix it. So I built a record management program. And then Sarbanes-Oxley passed, and there was, Enron and all of that. And they needed someone to take on the role of building out, SOX compliance. So I stepped into that. And so it's just gradually. And then We started to, that particular company started to do some acquisitions, and we were bringing in a lot of diverse, different people. We thought, oh, we need a code of conduct. So I got that, and it kept growing that way. I've had some really great mentors over the years. I've worked for some really incredible people who've given me opportunities, and it's mentoring. It's funny. I got requests this morning from within my organization to be a mentor, and my boss was like, "Well, do you have the bandwidth?" I was like, "Look, I never want to be too busy. I can't offer to mentor somebody because so much has been done for me."
Totally. How'd you get those mentors over the years? Do you feel like you asked for them? Did they just see something in you that they wanted to pour into you? How did that happen? Was it formal, informal?
It's both.
Yeah.
Both. I work for a couple of really great people who put their faith in me and let me, as long as, go for it. They saw potential there. On other occasions, I've gone out and looked for mentors. I worked for men for many, many years, and it was difficult because I'd never worked for a woman, and I was trying to figure out how to break through the ranks. So I went out and went to a woman that I had great respect for and said, "Would you think about mentoring me?" And she did. A lot of the people I've met through my compliance career have become mentors. People I can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I've got this going on. What do you think?" So some of it's been formal, some of it has not. I find the less informal mentorships have been the most beneficial. Either the people who see an opportunity or see something in you, or when something comes up and you need advice and you go looking for it. And you and I, we work together on the compliance career connections. I mean, just that, the people in that group and the people we meet through that group, you build out your network. And network is, you've got to have that network. You got to have that support. You got to have that circle around you.
You have to.
Both people above, people that are further in their careers than you are, and people just starting their career, because it makes you remember what it was like when you started.
Yeah, you're right. It's like the biggest, it's the biggest thing. In my first undergrad business class, there was this professor. He was really just like a businessman, and he was an older guy, and he was like, I don't know, just full of wisdom, full of, I was like, man, I'd love to be like this guy one day, And the first day of class, I'll never forget what he said. He goes, "If you leave this," and this worked, I guess. I want you to remember two things. You always got to have a plan. You got to think about what that next move is. And your net worth is your network. You have to build a network. And it's been so true for my own career. Any people that I know that are successful, people like you, they all say the same thing. You have to build that network out. And what I find pretty ironic and frankly sad is that so many people in the ethics and compliance community are not taking advantage of this network. Like a lot of what you described in your organization of being purpose forward, everybody wants to make a difference. It's so much easier to sort of, grab onto things and push things forward because we're all, everyone is sort of wired that same way. That's true in our industry. You know what I'm saying? I've never heard anybody reach out to another compliance officer or another, somebody in even a competitor's ethics department and not be able to have a meaningful conversation. That doesn't happen in marketing. Right. Like Pepsi's chief marketing officer is not buddies. Else. Yeah, exactly. And yet I don't see anybody taking advantage of it. What do you think that is? Not anybody. You know what I'm saying?
You know what? I will. The people who don't take advantages are missing out.
Totally.
Because it's one of the things I love about what we do and where we are is that you need something, you just raise your hand. I always say that there hasn't been an original document since the Magna Carta. So if you need something and you need to create something, somebody out there has it and they're going to share it with you because we're not proprietary.
Totally. Totally right.
And when you think about the number of people who volunteer to speak at our events, no matter which event it is,
right.
They offer freely their experience, their expertise, their best practices and tips. I mean, who else in the world shares all their best practices?
I know, none.
But compliance professionals.
I mean, manufacturing, the guy who's the head of manufacturing is not sharing all of his tactics with his competitors. It's just not happening. So
Mhm.
that is so, it's just like right there for us. And we're at this
Yeah.
really interesting time, I think, this inflection point, which I talk about all the time, but there's a massive inflection point in all, regardless of our industry, because COVID, because new normal, because great
Mhm.
resignation, for the stuff that we're fighting for to play a bigger role. And for us to push forward in a meaningful material way, the integration of ethics and compliance throughout the organization. And
Mhm.
I just, you know, as I look out over the next 5 or 10 years, I see that just increasing exponentially. Where do you see it going? How do we get there faster?
I think we're being propelled faster. I'm seeing change happen much quicker now than it did 10 years ago. So I think we're already being propelled faster. And I think it's only going to continue to grow. I think compliance as it exists today will expand. For example, in my role, I'm responsible for legal compliance, for information management, and for entity compliance
Oh,
to make
cool.
sure all of our entities are appropriately running and governing and things like that. I see the compliance role expanding and
Mhm.
becoming part of a bigger, a bigger part of the business. If you look at ESG, and compliance plays a key role there.
Mhm.
And I think that'll drive a lot of it too. I think in publicly traded companies, um, stakeholder, shareholder concerns are driving the compliance programs. Are we environmentally clean? Are we doing the right
Mhm.
thing? Are we diverse? Are we this? Are we that? How do we treat our employees? All of that is driving compliance. And people now are speaking with their dollars, and that's changing the face of how we do business. Because I want to spend my money at a company I trust and a company I respect, as opposed to just any company.
And you're not alone in that. That's how more and more and more people feel. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just such a big
Yeah.
opportunity. Well, I think it is. I just feel so lucky to have found myself in this industry because I've kind of,
Yeah.
you know, I wound up here by accident myself, and it seems like so did everybody else. Um, but I haven't been in it that long. You know, I haven't even been in it 10 years yet. But
Mm-hmm.
when I compare it to things that are going on in other industries I'm familiar with or other industries I've worked in, this is like the most exciting. I mean, there's more change happening here than perhaps anywhere else, and they're all kind of positive changes. These are not the changes that happen at like the VCR repair man conference. You know what I'm saying? Like that's dying. Okay, this is like we're about to burst forward, and we're just, you know, I think it's there for us to take advantage of if we're willing to step out and reach out across the aisle or humanize our programs or connect actually with the other people.
That's it.
It-
And we need to continue to learn.
totally.
Since I got into compliance, there hasn't been a day in my life where I didn't learn something. And I learned from the people around me. I learned from, now I'm not talking just the compliance people. I learned from every person I work with or interact with on a daily basis. I learned something new. And I always say to people thinking about getting into compliance, you'll never be bored. You will never be bored because no 2 days are ever the same.
And it's really such a bad name for it because people automatically think it's going to be boring, and it's not boring at all. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much change to push forward. You're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with making the world a better place. I mean, it's just me and you could probably nerd out on this all day, Jackie.
Yep.
But this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on and spending some of your time with us. Where can people find you and reach out if if they're trying to reinvent the wheel and they want to save a little bit of brain damage?
I'm, I'm on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anyone. I'm on Twitter at JAJ Chez, CHEZ. So feel free. Always happy to connect and build on my network. So come join me.
All right. Well, Jackie, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.